This is Metropole Television. You are watching Business AM. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiege. This is your Friday edition. Now, top of that, you do know that we are waking up to the biggest single day increase in COVID-19 cases in the country. To be specific, more than 700. And now the shocking number is that we are at more than 15,000 cases. Other than that, we are joined by Abraham Mudhago in the studio. The CEO, Miradi Capital, is going to make sense of the biggest headlines that you are waking up to today. All right, let's get into it now. The hope for local manufacturers to supply half of the BRT buses has now been thrown into jeopardy as an alternative plan will now see the private sector purchase the buses. Now, this will be now done through a consortium of public transport sector, which complicates the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative the government had with local vehicle assemblers. Housing and Urban Development Principal Secretary Charles Hinga has said in the past that the government had not paid for the buses that had already been branded in South Africa and was pulling out of the plan due to budgetary constraints. Even as the news about the new plans emerged, the government had already procured the buses long before the roads were ready and now been forced back to the drawing board to demarcate Thika Road afresh, build stations and footbridges as a cost of 5.6 billion before rolling out the plan, which will involve 950 buses at full implementation. Question this morning is this, therefore: why didn't the government go private sector from the onset of the plan? And as the latest turnaround by the government outlined the unpreparedness of the government in handling this issue. And finally, therefore, will the BRT buses and lanes be the magic bullet to solving the traffic crisis in the city? That document or that contract is now not in the government hands.
Now, let's first put context to this. I think the most successful mass transport systems in the world actually driven by government.
Yes.
If you look at the one in the UK, look at the one in Dubai, they're driven by government. Secondly, bringing buses is not a mass transport system, and that's why it's called a system.
Yes.
Because there has to be the buses, there has to be the vehicle, the vehicle of transport. It can be the bus, it can be the train. There has to be the infrastructure around it, and there has to be the system around it. Because you have to have stations, and it's a system. But I know that if I go to this station at this time, I get my train waiting for me, it gets me. Like if you go to London, whenever I go there, I live with my sister-in-law, who lives in a town past Luton, a place called Dunstable. That's the equivalent of Moranga.
Yes.
And I come to London every day, and I go back. And I know that my train at 8:23 will be passing, and it is never late, never early.
Yes.
So to an extent where people there do not need to live near London. And that brings me to the other point before I address the issue. Even the slum issue we have in Nairobi is not a housing problem, it is a transport problem. If we have a good transport system, the people who live in Mathare, for example, with the same amount of money they pay there, they could easily pay a better house in Moranga if we can be able to ship them to Nairobi within an hour. So you can see even that, this, whatever we're trying to do, would solve other problems other than just transporting people to work and back home.
Yes.
Now, coming back to this, if they're saying that we need to ensure that we bring the buses and put the systems in place, what are we trying to solve? We're trying to say that we're trying to reduce the number of private cars that come into town. The people who use private cars, they use them for only one reason. They only use them for only one reason, and that reason is because they want to get to work on time. So if this system can come to a way that it is reliable, that if I leave my car at home, I park and drive at the airport, I park to the train station,
yes,
my train will be there on time, get me to work, I finish. Because most people just bring their car, park it, then even get into the car and go home. So it's because it's reliable. But if the system becomes reliable enough, so to answer your question, is private sector going to do it? Sometimes. In a mass transport system, I don't think they'll deliver.
Yes.
And for only one reason.
Yes.
Private sector is driven by profit motive. If you look at this thing very carefully, there's a social angle and there's a financial angle. if they're allowed to do it on their own, they'll only do what makes profit. But here the government is trying to achieve an objective. First of all, of having less people, less traffic, moving faster, and moving people to and fro their places of work efficiently and cheap.
Yes.
So and you can see we keep shifting. We had bought the buses, we had branded them. Now we are abandoning. We're saying it's a private sector problem. Mass transport system is a government problem. It cannot be a private sector problem because it's infrastructural. It borders on being a public good.
Yes.
And anything public must be driven by government.
Yes.
Because it is the only way it will be delivered. Because, okay, fine, we've given it to private sector. Will the private sector build bridges? Will the private sector build stations? Will the private sector change the roads to allocate for this? The answer is no.
Charles Hinga keeps on saying that the only reason the government is pulling out is just because they've just run out of money. Is that not a better way out of this then?
Then the closest they should come to, then we should be talking about a PPP.
Yes.
Yes, that is the middle ground, where the government taps into private sector money but drives government agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
So, somebody would argue like this, Abraham, that yes, most of the matatu industry, I would say the transport sector, is actually held heavily by the private sector. So why can't you therefore involve them in some of these solutions that you're coming up? Case in point, give them the BRT project so they can run it by themselves.
But you see, you've put it very well.
Yes.
Let the government build the house, then allocate the rooms to everybody.
Yes.
But it cannot be the private sector building the house and allocating government space. You see, we have to do it the right way.
Yes.
It's the government to own. This thing must be owned by government.
Yes.
Then the government says, okay, this is the whole thing. There's for the bus part, you do, the matatus, you do it. For the bridge part, we do PPP. For the stations, we do this. This thing should also have a train component. Because as you've seen, they're putting up train stations all over the place.
Yes.
And I don't know why it's not featuring. So it is one entire ecosystem that is being built up. That has to be done from one central point, and that point has to be government.
Pretty much.
Then now, people can plug in, and private sector loves plugging into structures that are working.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody who lives in Nairobi did say this. Thika Road was already marked, actually not even once, twice already. The lines were marked, they ran off, they were remarked again, and now we're going back again to marking them. And I'd like to think that somebody was paid for that job by the government.
They were.
Does it sort of tell you the unpreparedness that the government is operating with when it comes to addressing this issue for BRT buses?
And I go back again.
Yes.
You see, this thing requires you build a system.
Yes.
Marking a road is not a system. That is knee-jerk. And that's why it's not, and it will not work. We'll paint them till we die. It will not work. The issue is, how do we put those BRT buses on our roads? And what do we need to do to our roads to allow that? Yes, designating a lane is a good idea. But within a larger framework of how those buses move, where they stop. Because look at that, where is that lane? That lane is it's the inner lane. I mean, it's the outer lane.
It's the outer lane.
It's the outer lane. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, for it to stop, that means the stage must be on that side. That means, and normally in our system, our stages are on the left. Now you have to build new ones on the right. The bridges have to come on the right. And it's true because, so that means you have to do a bridge from the left, they cross over, they come to the middle island, and enter the buses. The buses have to stop there. So if the bus is stopping, then what about the one behind it? So this is something, it's something that, and the interesting part is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. These things have been done everywhere. And interestingly enough, like the one for the London one, one of the major players, guys who designed that, the London one, is a Kenyan.
Yes.
And he was even on television and he's on record and said, all I'm waiting is to be asked. I will not volunteer, but
and then I'll come in and give you that solution.
I'll do it, and I'll do it for my country.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to take you back, Abraham, again. Is it too late for the Kenyan transport sector to be solved by the BRT buses with the way it is right now?
We have to go to Barum and say, let's start again. Let's throw everything out. Let's build it. Because see what we are doing, we're trying to fix something that's not working.
Yes.
That's not working.
Yes.
And the more we try to fix it, the more it will not work. So let's go to a room. The stakeholders are known. There's the matatu industry, the transport guys, everybody. And in a room, and by evening, we'll have a very clear, because the models are there. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of saying, do we use this model, do we use this model, do we hybrid this model, do we domesticate this model? That's it. And for that, then we stick to one. But this scheme of shifting goalposts, we are buying, we are not buying, we are buying locally, we are buying abroad, we are mixing. if we keep shifting those goalposts, we'll never get there.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
All right, let's therefore move on to the next issue this morning, where the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2020 is now before the National Assembly. It now indicates that the Treasury will not fully cover the non-performing loans under the government-backed SME Guarantee Fund if an SME defaults on payment of the loans. Well, now, this means that SMEs have to provide security before utilizing the funds provided for in the scheme. Now, the bill seeks to establish the size of the non-performing loans that the government can take from the 3 billion guarantee fund, with PS Julia Muya not disclosing the amount contained in the bill on basis of morality. Now, some of the proposals now stipulates that targeted SMEs must have an annual turnover of not more than 100 million and a workforce of between 51 and 250 workers. Commercial banks in the scheme will also have to look at the credit worthiness of the MSMEs before pushing loans to the businesses. So now, can this be considered as a guarantee scheme anymore when the government refuses to provide for the non-performing loans? Now, another question is that will this act as a deterrent for the SMEs going for the loans in the scheme? And what specific help do SMEs need now during the COVID-19 pandemic if that guarantee scheme therefore is going to be as relevant as the government needs it to be? That's the question, Abraham.
The first question is a simple no, it's a simple word, no.
It's not.
It's not. And but two, will it deter the SMEs from coming? Yes. The third one is what help do they need from the SMEs need in the pandemic? They need capital. Those are the short answers. Now, the long ones. You cannot bring up something and then deliver it as what it is not. Now, what do I mean? A credit guarantee scheme is supposed to do the very things they are negating here. Yeah, put
it much,
and quote me if you must.
Yes.
That this is ridiculous, honestly. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. Because the credit guarantee scheme is supposed to de-risk SMEs for them to be attractive to the commercial enterprises to come in. Now what you're doing, you're saying, even you the de-risker, you're also risk averse. So when the de-risker becomes risk averse,
yes,
then it defeats the reason why you're in the game anyway. A credit guarantee scheme works in a certain way. So if it is not working that way, then it ceases to be a credit guarantee. Then call it something else. Call it a credit line to banks, because that's what it's going to be now. Because how many SMEs have a turnover 100 million? Those are not SMEs. Those are mid-corporates. Let's call them by their true names. A workforce of 250 is not an SME.
It's not an SME. When you look at it, it's a mid-corporate.
So if that is it, then let's forget. There's no credit guarantee scheme. Let's tell the Kenyans the truth. That's dead on arrival.
The PS doesn't want to disclose the amount of money or the amount of risk that the government is ready to take when it comes to taking on a non-performing facility under that scheme. Why?
The credit guarantee scheme,
yes,
is designed to acknowledge that most of those debts will go that route. And that's why the commercial enterprises were not touching them in the first place. And that's why the government. You see, I'm telling you, government is the only person or entity that does things that nobody else does about care of its people, taking care of people and hand-holding and taking them through. Because now, what they're doing, they're taking a completely commercial outlook to it, which banks can do easily. You see, those criteria, we don't need government in it. This criteria, somebody who has a workforce of that and has a turnover of that, it doesn't need a credit guarantee scheme. If you take him to the bank will give him the money. So that they don't need. Those people don't need help. Yes. And those people will not come to that. So the registrar, that's the SME bill presupposes that guy will not come to be registered. That guy is already a bit corporate. The guys who they're supposed to register under the SME will not come. Because they're coming for what? To be registered to get what? Even in the first qualification, you don't even get to meet it yourself. You see, you'll not meet. And now you are saying that you provide security. Now, that is now where the problem is. It's on a guarantee in that sense. Yes, that is why it was guarantee. Guarantee is security. That's why they want. So when you say you give me security for me to guarantee you, it's like going to hospital. You're told you first be well before I treat you.
Good.
Yes.
Now, the bill is sitting in the House. Do you think that it's going to pass with the way it is? And I want you to talk from this perspective. Yes, we were promised money. Yes, there was an economic stimulus package that was pushed towards. Yes, but be cognizant of the fact that, yes, right now, we do know that the government is stressed of those funds to even push into guarantee schemes that we've been given this morning.
You remember when we talking about the stimulus package here on this desk?
Yes.
I told you that it is not the quantum of the package. It is the delivery and the effectiveness of how that money reaches the end user.
It's not coming out
efficiently and on time.
Yes.
Now you can see the efficiency. You're seeing the efficiency. Now we're already starting not to stop disclosing how much is reaching. So you see, I told you it's not about the quantum. It's about delivery. It's about this channel. How does this big number, 50 or 60 B, get to you as your 20, me my 30?
Yes.
And effectively to address my need such that I can be able to fix myself and pay it back.
Yes.
Yes. That is actually the elephant in the room.
Yes. All right. Now, Abraham, I want to take you back to exactly the other question that I asked you. That when you look at MSMEs right now, under the COVID-19 pandemic, the ones that were supposed to be covered under this 3 billion guarantee scheme that was, I would say, popularized and glorified by the president, what do they need most importantly now?
You see, in a pandemic like this, look at what it has done to big corporates. And by big, I mean large corporates.
Yes.
They are struggling. So it just gives you an idea of what is going to MSMEs. And as I told you, half of them, we don't even know where they are. But they're struggling anyway. So what, in a situation like this, what is trained is cash. People have cash problems because they can't pay their rent, they can't pay their workers, they can't pay the suppliers. And those suppliers cannot pay the suppliers, and that chain goes on ad nauseum. So cash, and cash comes from only two sources: your own resources and capital, and debt.
Yes.
Debt comes from institutions.
Yes.
Your own capital has run out because whatever they had, they have pumped in and it's run out. So the only thing left is institutions. In Kenya, the institutions are only two: banks and private funds, equity funds. Banks will not touch them. That's why they were trying to bring this in. Now they've now turned it around and are almost using bank criteria. So that is out of reach. So where does that leave them? With no one. So what will happen? They will die off. That is what is going to happen. So unless we can amend this act and stop whatever they're trying to do, then this will be an effort in futility. And we'll just be paying lip service to helping MSMEs. Because these funds that the president has allocated will not get home.
Pretty much. All right, now let's move on to the last issue that we have for you this morning, where Bar, Hotels and Liquor Traders Association has joined the Pubs Entertainment Restaurants Association, that is PERAC, to oppose a draft document that is at the Attorney General's office that seeks to bar the sale of alcohol to sit-in customers. Now, the associations claim that its members had to part with a lot of money to reopen their businesses and has cancelled on the government and has called, on the government to only punish those that are defying the measures implemented by the Ministry of Health. PERAC chairlady Alice Ope says that punishing the whole industry will only injure a sector that already suffered losses close to 15 billion shillings. By the end of June, the bar, hotels and liquor traders now maintain that the latest move stifles their operating environment that has been made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. Question being, should the government have figured a different plan to cushion players in these industries as all economic measures to cushion the economy from the effects of the pandemic continue to affect their businesses? That's the question.
You know, if you look at, first of all, for the record and for full disclosure, I'm working very closely with subgroups and restaurants, and I'm advising them on how to navigate the current regime they're in.
Yes.
Now, having said that, if you look at the way this subsector is being regulated in the COVID dispensation, they are heavily regulated. the number of measures they're supposed to go through, the number of hoops they're supposed to go through before they are certified as ready to open are very many. Number two, if you look at especially the alcohol and the one that is in question, on paper, alcohol is supposed to be either taken with a meal or taken away. But if you go to the ground, you'll see yes, pubs are up and running. Now, the question is, what is not working? And clearly, we are not short of rules and regulations. What we are short of is enforcement. Because the question is, why are pubs open past hours? Who's supposed to make sure that they're open or they're closed? You see, laws are made because human beings left on their own are their own worst enemy. They do the things they're not supposed to do. That's why you have laws. And any law must be punitive. If you comply, it's okay, you're not rewarded. But if you don't comply, you're punished. So the question is, are we enforcing even the things that we have now? Why haven't the rules we have now not worked?
Yes.
Why do we believe that increasing those rules will achieve the result we want to achieve? And what is the result? The end result is that we want to flatten the curve. That is the overall objective. The question is, will these measures flatten the curve? The answer is yes or no. But it is only yes if there is proper enforcement.
Yes.
Because even if you put a multiplicity of laws and you don't enforce them, then you'll continue putting more laws and more laws and more laws until people get lost and how many laws they have to comply with. So to answer your question, I think is a very important industry. It's an industry that is struggling. It's an industry that has been hard hit, especially by the curfew. Because remember, people tend to do their social things after they've done their work.
Yes.
Nowadays, when you do your work, you go and do your social in your house. So the restaurants are already hit. So I think we need to think a bit more about some of the rules we are putting in place, so that we balance the economic agenda and the medical agenda.
Yes.
And I think that there's middle ground.
Yes.
So I think whatever they are putting on the table, I think is worth a hearing before whatever guidelines they want to release are released. Because we should not overdo. The word is we should not overkill. As they say, don't use a hammer to kill a mosquito. You can use less force. So let's use the minimum required force to achieve what we want to do. So because even as we're dealing with the pathology, the pathological side of the COVID pandemic, let's not lose sight of the economic pandemic.
I see.
That will probably last much longer, long after you've probably sorted out the pathological side of it.
Yes. So now, got a quick question from you yesterday, and I was speaking to the CEO, Perak,
yes.
when he said, well, I don't think that the government really did figure how they were going to treat this sector in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Should we have seen now that direct economic package that was supposed to go to these restaurants, Abraham? Because even as you talk about fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, the ones that are directly hurt are now coming up. Because now we're talking about, even just in the month of June alone, we're talking about 15 billion shillings in terms of losses from this sector alone.
See, the package was for the entire tourism industry.
Yes,
and I know that industry is big. It has hotels. It even has light aircrafts, the ones that ship people from Wilson to. So it moves from that to the curio guy.
Yes.
You know, the small guy to the restaurants. So it's a whole chain. Normally the best way to look at it is looking at the tourist, international tourist, whatever it takes for him to leave, let's say London to Nairobi. So that means that aircraft is part of that chain. Whatever taxi takes him from there to his hotel is part of that chain. Whatever curio he buys, whatever he eats when he's here, whatever experience he experiences until the day he goes back. Or the local guy, how he moves around. That's how you look at that chain.
Yes.
So the restaurants, yes, are an integral part of that chain. But now, again, and it brings me back to what we just said, the 3Bs is a lump sum figure. Now you see what I'm saying. The test is how will it get down to these people. And that can only be, the bridge is a coherent policy of out of this money, this subsector will get this subsector will get this subsector will get this. Within the subsector, we break it down again. What is the criteria to access money, for example, in the restaurant space? You'll have to this. In my thinking, the money that is being given out is debt. Because it's going to be done through Tourism Finance Corporation,
yes,
which is a development financial institution. So it will be debt. But when I try to overthink that issue and go forward 2-3 years, if you look at banks like, for example, Equity have already given some of their hotels as long as 4 years to break. That is the horizon they can see of how long this lull will take for them to kick back. So it may also be a time for the government to think about a tourism Marshall Plan. Because we've done it for the agricultural industry, we've done it for various other industries. It has never been done for the tourism industry. And that will take the form of write-offs. Because if they can't pay, they can't pay. If somebody today has just finished building a hotel, which if you put up a good hotel, 100-room hotel in a good neighborhood, will set you back $1 billion plus to operate. If somebody has that kind of debt, how do they pay it? And they are closed. So we have to start thinking about how we are going to sort that out. And as a government, the money doesn't even have to come from Exchequer. There's a lot of money out there, even at IFC, at ADB. But we have to structure our narrative so well and showcase ourselves as a premier destination, which we are, that we cannot afford to lose, the world cannot afford to lose the tourism assets that are in Kenya. And for that reason, we need help. And if that narrative is structured that way, we'll get the help we need, because we need a tourism Marshall Plan, for sure.
Pretty much.
Yes.
All right. Now, Abraham, we have 4 seconds. I just want to get your quick sentiment on this. County revenue allocation formula. Lusaka was thrown out of the house yesterday.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
You see, senators are, everybody now, it's a Senate. But the truth of the matter is that senators, everybody is pulling in their direction. Kila mtu anavuta kwa upande wake. And that will continue for a while until, I think, again, the president will have to call them again and build consensus in whatever way they do it, then go back. Because right now, I think everybody's looking at, because revenue allocation, that formula, it is as complicated as they come. But, and every time it's changed, you see, it's a zero-sum game. For me to gain, somebody has to lose. So if this parameter goes up, it favors this county, but does not favor this county. So consensus is very hard to build. So that's why I think that maybe it may actually require the second intervention of the president.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
All right, now we're watching that, and let me tell you, on Tuesday, when they get back again, we shall be talking to Abraham Odogo, so we can actually see now where they settle. Remember, Sakaja is also fronting his proposal on exactly what system that the House can adopt in discussing this county revenue allocation formula crisis that is now made some counties go into a cash crunch. Take Abraham back to the time that he came to the studio this morning, 20146. That is your SMS line. I know those messages are going to come in, and as usually I actually do forward them to him as always. We take a short break. Once we come back, let's look at the entertainment industry in Kenya.